Welcome to a special impromptu episode of the Immersive Medical Podcast. We are here in Providence, Rhode Island at INACSL 2023 with Laura Gonzalez, the president of INACSL. I'm really glad I got that one right. Laura, welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I mean, I wasn't expecting to do an impromptu meeting, but here I am, so let's do it.
Absolutely. Well, we're really excited to have you. So just first things first, it's celebrating 20 years. INACSL celebrating 20 years, and your hero image says imagining the future of simulation. So what's the future of simulation?
Well, I think you have to take a step back and you have to think about where we were and where we've been. And the future of simulation is going to be moving beyond the physical space. It's going to be moving into the virtual world. It's going to be moving into 360, augmented reality, virtual reality, just really taking that physical constraints out of it. And that is really scary. That is challenging. It's about incorporating AI. And when you say AI, people get very, very nervous right now. It's like, oh my gosh, we shouldn't be doing that. But believe it or not, we're doing it, and it's going to continue to grow and it's going to continue to evolve. So, as a nurse, and a nurse
You're
in
a
this
nurse.
space. I am a nurse.
I didn't know that.
Oh, nurse first and foremost, my friend. I was an ER nurse many years ago, a nurse practitioner, and then I found my way to education where I started working at the University of South Florida and Central Florida for 20 years in academia.
Wow.
Doing nursing research in simulation. I was very fortunate to work with a crew at the University of Central Florida of innovative, groundbreaking pioneers. And I've been doing simulation for 20 years, and I have seen the good and the bad and the ugly, and I've seen the evolution. And it's exciting. I'm sure you've heard. I'm sure you've heard that post-pandemic, everybody was scrambling to find what kind of resources and how can I educate my nurses and where are the gaps. And we kind of fell back and leaned on virtual or screen-based.
Yeah,
but
like
we
computer-based
training.
trainings.
Yeah, computer-based training.
Yeah.
But we really weren't sure. Is this it? And that makes nurses nervous. And I don't know if you know a lot of nurse educators.
So I'm a paramedic, but I was a hospital ER medic. So I'd have been your best friend.
And I would have loved you too, because we need to be partners.
I'm faculty at our community college.
Fantastic.
So I work mostly, I have been working mostly with these paramedic educators, but recently I've been working with a lot of nurse educators, and I'm hearing very similar things.
Nurse educators are some of the best people you'll ever meet in your life. But nurse educators are also kind of wedded and bound to certain ways of doing things, good, bad, or indifferent. And it's hard, and it's a little anxiety provoking when you're saying to somebody, listen, we're going to take you out of the loop. Think about that. I've always been the person in front of the classroom. I've always been doing lectures. And now you're telling me I'm going to use this device, which is going to deliver content. It's going to pre-brief my students, deliver content, and asynchronously debrief my learners. What am I going to do?
Interesting.
It's the human in the loop. Remember, we're pulling this nursing faculty out. That's who we are. I mean, what do we do? So we have to kind of re-envision our role as nurse educators. We're not being supplanted by AI or VR.
Right.
We need to know how to use it to our advantage. How can we use this wonderful technology to help our learners? Because really, it's about being student-centric. It's not all about me.
Yeah.
And it's hard for nurse faculty to step back and say, okay, let's look at this a new way. How can I use this for my benefit and for my learners' benefit?
So how big of the problem do you think it really is, where they feel like they're going to be replaced by VR or AI or something?
It's a huge problem.
Huge problem.
I would say it's a huge problem. And I would also say, as you know, if you've been following the generation of nurse educators, we are at a pivotal time. So many nurse educators are retiring. So many nurse educators are like, you're asking me to use this new technology. I don't want to do it. I'm not feeling it. I'm out. So now we're losing all of this tremendous amount of brain power that is leading our profession. And so we have these very eager young educators. It is a challenge.
I see. So there's a gap in a marketplace and a shortage, and then there's also technology that is just exponentially growing quickly, and there's a learning curve to that. And I'm looking right now at the byline, the about on your guys' website, and it says dedicated to advancing the science of healthcare simulation, and you cannot do that without technology.
There you go. That's
Wow.
but think about it. It's just a trickle down effect. We're losing nurses at the bedside, so there's this huge gap, right?
Yeah.
And so now we're trying to quickly fill up these nurse positions because the community needs nurses. And then we have a shortfall of qualified nursing faculty.
Yes.
That's a key component. And so now we saw this when the advent of electronic health records came on. These EHRs were like, the nurses like, what? I'm not charting by pen and pencil
Yeah.
anymore. What is this about? But you know what? After a while, you get those early adopters, and then you got those laggards on the
Yeah.
other end. We came about, and they're like, okay, this does help my efficiency, if you will. And I think we need to think about it. We need to think about this new technology that way. I'm a more efficient educator. I can spend
Yes.
more time.
You're Laura 2.0.
I can spend my time now not worrying about this content because it's being delivered in an alternative format. And maybe I spend my time one-on-one with students that need a little more assistance. Maybe I do more remediation with them. So I think we just need to, I hate to use the word lean in because it's been used so
Yeah.
much, but really, as an educator, let's just take a step back. I love ChatGPT. I'm not going to lie. It's like my favorite thing in the world, and I have embraced it. I even
use it
pay for
too,
the
yeah.
subscription. And when I talk to people about that, how are you using that? And aren't you worried? There is a responsibility. I am not giving up or ceding that responsibility to ChatGPT, but I'm making the best of it, and I'm using it to be as efficient and effective as possible. So when I talk about that to other faculty members and educators, like, oh my God, Laura, I'm a little nervous about that. Students are cheating, this, that, and the other thing. Let's turn it around. How can we use that to make it a more a rigorous curriculum, understanding the technology? These are users. These students are users of the technology, and that's not going away. So we have a concern right now. I think we're in a little bit of a gray area as far, because I know people are concerned about where we're going in nursing education.
Well, let's talk a little bit about where we're going in nursing education. So, I've been working. I guess really, let's talk about what people are concerned about. So, I've been working with your team, and we're doing a survey here at INACSL, because where else are you going to have? How many attendees do you have? Over 1,000 active attendees here?
Over 1,000. It's so exciting.
Amazing. So 1,000 nurses, educators, clinical educators. These are the people who are the front line of the issues and the concerns that you're talking about. They are also the solution to the problems of the World Health Organization says we're going to have a shortfall of healthcare workers, 15 million in the next 7 years. If we don't produce 2 million more nurses per year for the next 7 years, we won't even meet the need.
Astronomical.
Right? So we've been surveying them, a very, very simple survey, which is what's your role or your title, and what is your biggest challenge in clinical education? Very open-ended. And I'd like to show you some preliminary results.
Sure.
Now, when all of these come in, we're of course going to share these with INACSL, because we are very interested in working towards solutions together and seeing if we can come up with some answers. Let's see here. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so it looks like right now we've got about 39 responses. So this person's faculty, and their biggest problem is lack of trained sim educators. So there's one right there for staffing shortage. Here's another problem that they have. Obtaining clinical sites and finding master's prepared clinical faculty to teach. That's another one for staffing and education. You already mentioned that. And these people are here today. They might be walking by you right now. Here's one. Our biggest challenge right now is getting qualified, there's another one for staff, getting qualified field specialists to assist with sim days. So now they have too many students to teach, not enough qualified faculty to perform simulations for clinical competency. Sometimes it's difficult to recruit for sim days, and many seem to be intimidated by the technology. I'm not even, that is someone else's words. Let's just skip ahead. We'll do like two more. Let's just jump ahead. All right. Oh, here's one. Standardization. Big problem that they're having is standardization. So let's talk briefly about that, because standardization and INACSL, those two are intertwined. So where does the future of technology, immersive simulation, this scalable, deployable, remote solution, how does that fit in with standardization? Like, how do you climb that mountain as an organization like INACSL?
So a couple things. When you're thinking about these clinical sites, and you know as a paramedic, when you did your field training,
Yes.
you know, you go out there and you get what you get, right? It could be a very quiet day, it could be a very busy day. And so it really does vary. It varies by preceptor, by placement, so there's a lot of variables. But at the end of the day, you want the learners to come out with at least some experiences that have been standardized. There was no standardization before we started simulation. But if I believe that every learner that graduates from this program needs to manage a cardiomyopathy or an infarct or a stroke, this technology that we're talking about is capable of providing that authentic, reproducible, at any time, asynchronous, not physically bound experience. So I can feel confident that my learners have had that experience. One of the variables, and we talk about it here, is faculty. A lot of faculty, the people who are here are invested in simulation. They come because they're invested. They may not be very informed yet, but they're here because they're committed. But we have other people that are not, and you saw that. I wish I could find more qualified sim faculty.
Yes.
I've always been of the opinion, I only want people to do simulation who want to do simulation, who understand it. Because if you have faculty who are disgruntled, it's not a good experience for the learner.
You mean the people who are going to perform the simulation?
The facilitators.
Okay, thank you.
Facilitators,
Because
absolutely.
students, all you students have to do simulation. This is the way it goes, folks.
It's the way it goes, but
Yeah.
it can be a make or break experience for them. They could have an amazing experience where they come out
Right.
feeling validated, they're feeling that they have learned something, or they can have a deflated experience where they come out feeling, wow, this is the worst thing I could have ever done. But what we do here at INACSL is provide those resources. We have the standards of best practice. We want the facilitators to feel competent and confident when they deliver this experience, that the learners are psychologically safe, that they are, learning, and they can, transfer and translate the knowledge to the clinical space.
Yes.
That's the goal. And so what I believe is, and I don't think in the near future, we'll always have didactic classroom time. I don't think we're going to go away. We could have it online, hybrid,
Could
not
be hybrid.
necessarily in seats in the classroom. I don't think that is necessarily needed. I think we'll always want to have that tactile experience with that simulation and that mannequin, that 3D, where I can feel it. And although things are advancing rapidly in that space. And then we can have these alternative experiences in this virtual world, thinking about all of our learners. This is scalable. I can't get 20 students around a mannequin and have an effective simulation, but I can certainly get 20 students headsets and have that reproducible, authentic experience. And that's where I think the future is going. And we need to think that way. We have to be less concerned about my role and think about the bigger picture, getting these nurses that are going to be competent and nurse ready.
Yes. Man, I talk all the time about the cost of inaction. Like, what's the cost going to be if we don't tackle the problem today or yesterday of a shortfall of 15 million healthcare workers? Okay, so I hear you talking about the fear of the nurse and the simulationist, but if we don't embrace something that's scalable, where are they going to be when there is a severe shortage and a severe need?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a quick example. So right here, I have a little slide up here, right? So by the end of 2020, the nursing shortage rose to 1.1 million, and central line infections went up 28%. What's that number going to be in 7 years when it's 15 million is the shortage? Because those central line infections are not associated with the physician inserting it. It's associated with the care team who is understaffed, overworked, right? And maybe they weren't quite ready and they're a new nurse, right? Because their educational institution was understaffed and overworked.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you, you're a nurse. Let's pretend for a minute. Embody the fear of everyone around us. If you're afraid or concerned, we'll say, if you're concerned about AI or VR taking over and your job being an issue, are you not equally concerned of standing in front of a shortfall of 15 million in 7 years and having to 7x, 10x your production with the existing tools you have today if you don't embrace something that
Absolutely.
makes you more powerful? So how does that, like, what's your response to that kind of a situation of inaction, the cost of inaction?
You know, it's scary. But what we have to remember is that simulation came about. Obviously, we know it came from aviation, but the goal of simulation is to improve patient outcomes
Yes.
and patient safety. That's why we're doing this. The whole thing about, we're no longer able to practice on a patient, if you will, like I did when I went to nursing school a million years ago. That's unacceptable. So preparing the learner, preparing these nurses to be able to care for these patients, if we're not shoring up this gap that we have of these young nurses, and I say young by career-wise, not necessarily age-wise, coming
Sure.
into the profession, not having dealt with these and patients
They're
are
fresh.
sicker. Fresh nurses, patients are sicker than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And because we've had this huge brain drain in the hospital, they're called to care for these patients that are requiring so much resource. They're not prepared. We're hearing from the institutions, from the hospitals, these nurses are coming out of school and they don't know how to do basic things.
Right, and our population is aging out. 65 plus
Yeah.
is going to go to 80 million. It's 54 million in 2019. It's going to go to 80 million in half the time it took to get to 54.
And people are living longer.
Yeah.
So let's not even talk about the simulation and this technology that we're talking about, AI and VR. Think about the technology in the hospital that's advancing, incrementally, exponentially. You're struggling here in this VR world. You're expected to deliver, and you have to keep up. Like I said, with the EHR,
Yeah.
you'd have thought it was a revolution. These nurses were like, I don't need this. Now we're looking at these peripherals, these devices that are maintaining life longer. They need to embrace this technology. Not everybody has to be the super user. But how about let me understand this? How is this going to improve my job? How is this going to improve my patient outcome? That's why we're here. So for those people that are barking and balking and saying, I don't like this, I'm not about this, I don't like this gaming thing, your patients are already in that space. We're using VR for patient discharge.
Right. Mental health. We're using for pain management.
Yeah, pain management, PTSD. So whether you like it or not, it's here, it's now. And now we're asking you to use it in your classroom. Your patients are already experiencing, and with good outcomes. It's much more efficient. The surgical throughput is much quicker. Think about the Da Vinci's and all of the electronic and digital surgery that they're performing. We just have to continue to grow and really just open our minds and say, this is really where we're going. There's an old saying, either on the bus or you're under the bus, unfortunately. And I think we need to
And when you're under the bus, we're all going to have to take care of you because you're going to be in the hospital.
Exactly. And you're going to be in a smart hospital.
You're going to be in a smart hospital.
And there's going to be a
thank the
nurse
Lord.
remote watching your vital signs from a distance.
Well, you know what? And thank goodness.
Yeah. So.
Man, Laura, what a pleasure. You are a force to be reckoned with. People, if you could sit across the table from this woman and feel the energy, you would not need a cup of coffee.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, Devin. And thanks for coming out here and being with us. We so appreciate it. It was a pleasure.
100%. So really quick, INACSL has their own podcast, and it is called, what's it called? It's called Let's Talk Sim. So if you're not listening to Let's Talk Sim, it is time to start. Check out on your favorite podcatcher. Go to the INACSL website. It's free, valuable information. So jump in and be a part of imagining the future and celebrating 20 years with INACSL. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's great.
Hey, Connor, are you finding it challenging to organize asynchronous clinical education for all your students?
Devin, I don't have any students.
Well, that's okay, because no matter the class size, from 10 to 10,000 students, we have the perfect solution for you.
VR Patients isn't just a virtual reality platform. It's an asynchronous learning tool, which means students can access it anywhere, anytime.
Exactly. They can jump into a VR simulation from their VR headset or even from their web browser. Clinical competency training doesn't have to be confined to a specific schedule or location anymore.
To learn more about how VR Patients can make learning more accessible and scalable, head over to vrpatients.com. That's vrpatients.com.
And if you don't have any students just like Connor, but you do have a VR headset, you can try it right now for free on the MetaQuest Store or Steam.